So this is a piece from Comme de Garcons from 2003. And Comme de Garcons is a really foundational line, both for fashion and also for the Fashion Resource Center, which is where this garment lives. This is one of the quieter pieces that we have of hers. It exercises quite a few things that she's very much known for. And one of those is deconstruction and reconstruction. So just for a little bit of background, Rei Kawakubo is the designer behind Comme de Garçons, and she was born in Tokyo in 1942. And it wasn't until 1975 where she held her first show. And at that point, she had really already become a prominent figure in Japan. And one of the things that makes her clothes interesting is that she doesn't actually sketch anything. So she works instead with pattern makers to develop ideas through draping and through technique and through hand. And so this is a really nice way or nice example of one of the ways that she does that here. So we have, and this is a skirt, believe it or not. It looks a little bit complicated on the table without a body in it. It can be hard to orient sometimes. She also leaves quite a few elements raw in her collections. So that's one of the signatures here. So you can see that our pieces are starting to unravel a little bit. But even though they're raw, they're still hyper-constructed. So they're not coming apart. They're coming apart, but only to a point. So here in this skirt, we have 2 layers of wool. And you can see in this layer here, the brown layer, that there's a very thin edging here, which is a fusible interfacing. And fusible interfacing is just it's a separate material that gives a little bit of structure, and it's fusible. It has a type of glue on it that's heat adhered to the fabric. So by putting that strip of fusible along the edge here, she guarantees that it really doesn't come undone after a certain point. And if you look at how long some of these strings are that are coming off, that's a really clear indication, there's another one up here, that she's actually cutting this on the grain. So I'm gonna open this up in just a second and you'll see that there are actually just exactly perfect squares here, and that the square points are what give you this handkerchief edge. But because it's a square, and within woven fabric, you have your warp and your weft, which is going to run in exactly a square direction. Ultimately, I could just peel this fabric undone until I have a pile of threads here, and obviously she does not want that. So she's used here a fusible edge, and then it's maybe a little hard to see, but there are actually 2 very, very delicate rows of stitching that perform 2 functions. So one, they secure additionally our fusible interfacing here, and also they perform a kind of a barrier. So at a certain point, this fabric just will not unravel anymore. And so it's important to her that yes, it's maybe not finished, except that in some ways this is actually more finished than if you were just to make a standard hem, like we see in the other part of this skirt. And so here you just have this very simple double turned hem. So I want to touch base here quickly on the waistline. And the waistline here is just a single cut. So what's happening in our waist with this point here is mirrored exactly in the handkerchief form of the hem. And so you see recurring elements that happen in both places. Now, what's most exciting to me about this so now that the piece has been laid completely flat, we can see that this is actually our waistline. And so the waistline, where normally if this was a circle skirt, for example, you would cut a circle and that would form your waist. Here instead, what she's done is actually just made 2 single cuts, and she's not eliminated any material. So normally you would just take a circle, almost like a cookie cutter or a donut, right? You just pull that center out. Here instead we just have 2 single cuts. And what happens is that when they open, they form enough space that you could actually put a waist into this. And then you can see here, it's opened just with a zipper. And the zipper is just folded over, and that's how you get that very small, subtle pleat here at the end. So you see the recurring element in the corners, and you see it same here in the waist. Now, the other exciting thing here is that we have 2 layers. So here's the outside layer, and if I fold this back, what I'm so delighted by is the way that these things are stitched together. So there is no waste in this cut here. So this has been stitched. It has the exact same cut. Okay, and I'm going to turn it around to the other side here, so I think it's easier to see. So now I flipped this so that it's now on the back, and you can see this is the inside, and you can tell obviously there's the zipper and a very, very large tag. So here's that cut from the waist. I'm just going to tuck this under so it's a little clearer. And what's so interesting is you see this cut out here is mirrored again in the way that this is stitched together more broadly. And if I take this end here and fold it back, you can see here's the other side of where that cutaway is. So she's never actually removing any material. Everything is either just being folded back or allowed to hang. So this cut along this edge, once upon a time, lived over here. So you can see you have a nice clean finish here, and then the same thing here. All of this is completely clean. And our seams now are sandwiched exactly in between our lining layer and the self layer, or the body of the skirt. And so I find this just to be an incredibly elegant example, both of a zero waste pattern cutting, but also in the complexity of having something like a raw edge.